Welcome to another episode of One of Us Knows What They're Talking About, and the other one is you. I'm Lori Burch, your host. Join us as we discuss and unpack wills, trusts, estate planning, and probate law in a way that's actually informative, interesting, and, well, hopefully entertaining. Because if you don't have a will, the state of Texas has one for you. Let's dive in. This is a fun topic today, for sure, because we're playing a game that I was actually thinking about. We should have a game show intro music or something. Sarah, maybe you can edit it to have that in there. Or I also have this vision where the show is Who Owns the House? And I was almost thinking it would be like, Who owns the house? Work on that, Sarah. I'm sure you will. So we're going to talk about who owns the house in Texas. Because this is something, I think when we talk about the biggest misperceptions that people have, this is one of the biggest. It could arguably be the biggest misperception that people have is who owns the house? Okay, Sam, you're in it. Let's try it. Ready?
Okay.
From the top, after three. 1, 2, 3. Who owns the house? I wasn't looking for an echo.
I thought you were gonna start and then you did it and then it just it's
because
fine.
You didn't. You were laughing.
I was waiting for you to start and then I don't know if you heard me go who
Okay.
And Sarah started laughing.
One. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Who owns?
Stop. I was doing well and I looked at her.
Sarah, do you know how to shut your face?
Is there a delay on your end? Because it's literally just an echo for me.
No, that's just Sam.
No.
That's actually what she's doing, Sarah.
No, I was doing it at the same time as you.
It's coming across as an echo to me too.
Yeah.
It felt like the same time for me. So I'm
in the same room and I can hear Lori first.
I don't know what to tell you guys.
She's in this. So you can't blame a delay when you're in the same room, Sam.
I thought it was at the same time, so I don't know what to do.
Do you have to say things in your head before you verbalize them? Because then maybe that's what's happening here.
No?
All right.
I don't know how to help.
I give up. I don't even know what to do now. Anyway, who owns the house? Biggest of bigs misperceptions, right? So there is an assumption, and you know what assuming does, don't you, Sarah?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what assuming does? What does it do?
No.
Oh my God.
I had it, and then I just realized maybe I don't have it.
Have you never heard this before? What assuming does?
Maybe.
Okay, I want no. Either that is a yes or no.
You and me.
No, Sarah. I want you to type or write down right now. Assume. Can you do that for me?
Makes an ass out of you and me.
Ass out of you and me.
Well, yeah, right. I had heard it. There we go.
Wow.
What? Did you guys not have your Wheaties today? I mean, what's happening? All right.
Do you not have a Red Bull?
No.
Something gives you wings. So people assume that if they buy a home with their spouse, that if one of them dies, it will automatically go to the other. Is that true? In Texas?
No.
She did it.
Okay. It's not true?
Right.
It is not true.
It is not true.
Sam, why is that not true?
Joint tenancy.
Oh my gosh. You made Sarah
Whoa.
use a big word.
A big
know.
word.
Joint tenancy.
And the fact that she has this knowledge, she doesn't know what
crazy.
ancillary means, but she knows what joint tenancy means. I
Don't
mean,
underestimate Sarah.
Yeah.
she doesn't know how many Supreme Court justices there are. Oh, you know what, Sarah? You should have said, oh, I thought you meant of all time. Then that would have made 50 sound a lot less ridiculous.
One for each state.
That's right.
One for each state. 51, one for Puerto Rico.
Aww.
All right. Right. So, Sam, what you were about to say, but there was a delay, is Texas doesn't have joint tenancy. And joint tenancy is a type of property ownership, meaning that there is a right of survivorship where if one co-owner dies, it automatically goes to the other. And Texas does not have joint tenancy. But you know, that's not the whole story, because that's just according to the property code. But then when you travel down on over to the estates code, there's a way to create joint tenancy rights of survivorship. Did you know that, Sam? Sarah does.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Sarah.
Sam, you've
I
been
don't
out of
like being
legal
in the
production
position-
too long.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
This is kind of the one of the big areas that I don't really know a lot about, and it's obviously showing.
No, you're fooling them well.
So what Sarah feels like.
Yes. So in the estates code, there's
Whoa.
wow.
That's a Jordan level burn on Sarah from Sam.
Jordan's not here, so I had to keep the beef up, I guess.
Do you? Because that was
That was
bullseye,
My
and
bad,
you
Sarah.
sunk her.
Sid,
that was painful.
love.
All right. So anyway, yes, the estates code allows for a way to create a right of survivorship. Not to get too hyper technical, but the point being is that without any sort of plan, that it doesn't automatically go. So there are solutions that you should be talking to your estate planning firm about, whether it's the form of doing a separate survivorship agreement that would get recorded in the deed records, or a transfer on death deed, or doing a trust, or doing all of the above, in fact. But it does not happen automatically. We've even seen things where, you never know what you're gonna get with title companies or appraisal districts, more to come from there. But you never know what you're going to get with title companies. And so I've seen deeds in Texas where they'll say, sure, we'll throw in with rights of survivorship or something like that. And they'll put that language on the deed. And it's like, oh, you're so close. You're so close. But technically that won't work either. It can't be in the original deed. It has to be a separate filing, a separate document to create a right of survivorship. FYI. So anyway, this trips up a lot of people. It's probably one of the most common issues that we run into, particularly on the probate side of things, because a common scenario that we have is where, let's say you've got a couple that's been married forever, which is going to be Luke and Cynthia when they're older. They're going to be one of those like, oh my God, they were married forever. And what happens is, like, one will die, and the surviving spouse won't do anything because Sure, life insurance retirement had a beneficiary on it to them. And so that's something where you just contact the company and that preempts, there's no need for a will or a trust or anything like that. Then if you have all joint bank accounts, what you're not realizing is that when you're signing up for those accounts, you're probably signing documentation that says you want it to be with rights to survivorship. So you go to the bank and say, my spouse passes away. And they're like, okay, we'll see a death certificate, take their name off of it. So they're like, well, everything's taken care of. And then again, that assumption creeps in about the house that it's just automatically theirs. And look, if you keep paying the mortgage company and you keep paying your taxes, nobody's going to tell you that the title to your home is not yours. What will happen is if you go to refinance, if you go to sell it, those will all be triggers where now you're going to have a title company tell you, whoa, why was there nothing done when the other person who's on this property passed away? But where it typically comes up, back to Luke and Cynthia in their ripe old age, is
Yep.
let's pick on Cynthia. Let's say Cynthia dies first, right? And
That's actually, we have an agreement that that's the way it needs to happen.
Cynthia dies first. Luke doesn't do anything because accounts are joint, beneficiaries are all there. And then Cynthia dies, and then her executor, Sam, comes to probate firm and says, Cynthia passed away. I need to probate her will. And then we're like, did Cynthia do anything when her husband died? And then you'll say, well, no, she didn't think she had to. Oh, no, wait, we killed Cynthia off. So then when Luke dies, sorry, I was trying to kill off Luke first. Yeah, Cynthia's married to Cynthia. So when Luke dies and his executor, Sam, goes to probate firm, and then Sam says, I need to probate for Luke, then the probate firm's gonna be like, well, what happened because his wife is still listed on this home? And you were like, oh, and then all the excuses come in. Oh, we didn't think we had to, or my brother's uncle, cousin who was a lawyer 30 years ago said you didn't have to, or all the things that we hear from people. And so now we're faced with the issue of now we've got to backtrack and do something there. And you only have 4 years. So let's presume there was a will. You only have 4 years to probate it. So if you're finding out about this after the fact, then there's a lot of messy stuff and hoops that you have to jump through. I don't want to give specific examples because that's the next part of who owns the house. Don't even try, Sam. I don't even want you to try.
Okay. Sorry.
I won't even let you. Okay. So, what do you do about this? And I kind of alluded to that earlier. I mean, you could have a will still has to go through probate, but at least it will happen. There's other deed type of work, legal filings, trusts, all of that kind of depends on what's the best route for you. But let's talk about scenarios if you don't have any plan about it. So if you get married and then you buy a house together, both names on the title, one of you dies, no will, who would get the house? What's really important with this dead air is that I'm talking to people who have worked multiple years in an estate planning and probate firm, and they're still not sure of the answer. So that should tell.
I am sure. I just don't know who's going to answer because
I thought Cynthia was gonna. I don't know why.
I thought you were because you kept to.
I thought it looked like you were gonna answer, and it just felt like it was pointing towards you because of the example. And then I died. So then I was leaning forward, like, is she gonna answer? And then my bad.
Well, okay, hold on. And I need to clarify something. Were there any prior marriages? Were there any children?
I gave you all the facts you needed.
Okay, cool. So in that case, you would need to go through a proceeding, but the other spouse would ultimately.
What would the default laws say? That it's not automatic. You'd have to go through a legal process to determine probate. But what would the state of Texas say?
Okay, see, I know too much, and I'm sitting here hung up on, okay, if we're sure it's community property, then the spouse would.
I said they bought it after marriage. So it's community property.
Community property.
They bought it after marriage.
After
Both
marriage.
names are on the title.
Yes.
So surviving spouse.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. Okay. All right.
Just whenever you start, I'm like, okay, let me think through the facts and let me figure it out.
Let's say spouse one owned a house. There's no kids. Nobody has any kids in the scenario, okay? Mm-hmm. Spouse one owned a house. And then gets married and spouse two moves into the house. Spouse one dies, no will. Who owns the house?
Heirs?
Heirs. Of course, it's always heirs. Who is the heirs? Well, let's say in this scenario, okay, I've got one for you. Let's say in this scenario that they had two kids together after they got married, because they're not your parents, Sam.
I was like 8 when they got married, so it's a really long engagement.
Did you legally change your name though? How did you become Anderson?
Oh, I never asked. I mean, I don't know. I'm hoping so. I mean, they let me in the country with Anderson, so I would hope so. I'm sure they had to provide my birth certificate.
Okay. All right. So scenario is spouse one has a house, gets married, spouse two moves in, they have two kids together, spouse one passes away. Who owns the house? And this is after 1993. Because I'm sure that was going to be your next question. But wait a minute, is this before September 1st, 1993, or after? It's after.
Kids? I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Well, what does it sound like it should be? What do you think it should be?
Oh, it should be spouse.
Why?
Because they were married and in love and had children.
They weren't. No, they weren't married whenever it was acquired. So that is their separate property. Whenever somebody passes away,
spouse is one separate property. So is it different? Is the answer different though? If it was their separate property prior to the marriage?
Yeah, because it's not community property.
Right. But again, like that spouse, and then they have kids that are together. Spouse one has no kids from any previous marriage or relationship, as the case may be. So who would the house belong to?
Kids.
It would be split.
How would it be split?
I mean, the kids.
If we split to the kids, so two kids, so 50-50?
I'm trying to remember the chart that's on your desk right now. I'm trying to remember exactly which portion.
Okay, so this is painful enough, and I've got more. Who owns the house? So yes, this is a community property state. We kind of just floated that by there, but that's what's the driving factor here. So if spouse one owns something prior to marriage, then that is considered separate property. So in that case, separate property would go to the children, right? But or if there were no children, then it would be spouse one's parents.
Yeah.
Oh.
Except the surviving spouse, and I really don't know how this is supposed to work. The surviving spouse has a 1/3 life estate interest. And a life estate means you basically own something until you die, and then it automatically reverts to whomever else, in this case, the kids.
That's why
I don't know how you have a 1/3 life estate. Do they just have to stay in 1/3 of the home? I mean,
yeah.
I know. So there's probate and probably real estate attorneys that have dealt with this scenario, so they could probably explain that better, but we've never run into it. So we've never had to really figure that out, but it's pretty bizarre, I think. So then let me do the next one of who owns the house? This is my favorite example. By the way, this is all post September 1st, 1993.
The laws did change.
The laws did change.
And only 2 of us were alive. Right.
So let's say there were more than 2 of us alive at that time.
In this room?
Oh, you mean in this podcast? I thought you meant Burch Law.
No.
I always think of the collective. I always think of the Borg. Okay. Yes. So this is my favorite one. Okay. So let's say you've got spouse 1, spouse 2. Spouse 1 was married before, had 2 kids, gets divorced, marries spouse 2, or 3. No, marries spouse 2. They buy a house together. Both names are on it. Spouse 1 dies. Who owns the house?
Spouse 2?
Did you say both names were on it?
Spouse 2, yeah. Yes, but that wouldn't matter, by the way.
Well, no, I didn't catch that part, so I was just wondering.
Okay, they got married, they bought the house, and spouse 1 paid for the whole thing. It's only their name on the title. And you know what? The answer doesn't matter. It's the same. So both names are on the title, 1 name on the title. Now, mind you, this is based on the assumption that there's no will, trust, there's no prenup, postnup, there's none of that stuff. Because the whole point of why we exist as a business is to try to help people plan things so that intended things happen with their money, property, and children. So we're presuming there's no sort of legal documentation. Spouse 1, married, had 2 kids, got divorced, meets spouse 2, gets married, buys a house, both names on the title, spouse 1 dies, no will or any sort of legal documentation. Who owns the house? It's like the number one thing I do in all the seminars that I give. And then I'll have some smart ass say, the bank. Right.
But the kids and the new spouse.
Anyone?
Is this not on?
Wow. So Sarah, you can spout off
Did you not hear
joint tenancy, but you can't answer like the thing that I say most often when I do these presentations.
Oh, can you not hear us?
No.
Cynthia said it like 3 times.
Oh, I couldn't hear it.
Oh, I even got closer. I'm like, I made a joke. Is this thing on?
She was like, kids and spouse, and then you go, anybody, and she goes, kids and spouse. Sarah,
and I'm like, is this thing on?
Sarah, could you hear it?
No, not really.
Oh, and I got really close. Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
So for the fans, what's the answer, Cynthia?
Oh, the kids and the spouse.
So give me the division of this then, if it's kids and spouse.
Like it would be if the spouse would retain. Okay, you have the whole. Right. So break that off. So of the half that belonged to the spouse, that piece would be divided amongst the kids and the spouse.
Well, no, not the spouse. The spouse does not inherit anything. The surviving spouse does not inherit anything. The surviving spouse just retains their half.
Yeah.
So the kids would inherit spouse's 1.
The spouse's half.
What if, same scenario, except the kids were from this marriage? Spouse 1, spouse 2, get married, buy house, have 2 kids.
That's the same answer as the other one.
Right. Because what's the triggering factor here in Texas is when there are children from outside the marriage, they inherit their parents' community property. Now, what if those two kids were underage and a judge has to step in and appoint who will oversee their inheritance for them? Who do you think a judge is going to pick?
If you have not pre-designated the other parent of the children.
No, again, all these questions are based off of no planning happening because that's where 70+% of people find themselves.
The other parent of the children.
I mean, probably.
Yeah.
That's
or grandparent.
Right. So spouse 2 is now co-managing her home with her deceased spouse's ex. Right? Because they're the ones that are pointed there. Okay, let me give you another scenario. Same thing. Let's say spouse 1 and spouse 2 are two women. They get married. They buy a house. One of them goes through artificial insemination and gives birth to a child. Now, everything through a cryobank. So don't worry about any sort of paternity from a sperm donor or anything like that. Okay, that piece is clean. Let's say, though, that spouse 1, female 1, has a child during this marriage to this other person. Spouse 2 is on the birth certificate because that's what happens in Texas by virtue of being married. I mean, for now, it'll do that. But nothing else is done. I'm not going to say what else is not done because I'm not going to lead you down this road. I'm just saying, and this is a very common scenario for a lesbian couple where they're married, buy a house together, both names on title. One of them goes through artificial insemination, anonymous sperm donor, everything's through a cryobank, everything's signed out there. Other spouse that did not give birth, other woman that did not give birth, is on the birth certificate. Spouse 1, who gave birth to the child, dies, no will, nothing. Who owns the house?
The kid, right?
The kid.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Whose genetic spawn is it?
I said went through artificial insemination.
Oh, artificial insemination. Okay.
The kid, right?
The kid would own the whole house?
Or like spouse 1's ownership of it. Whatever the one that gave birth was.
Okay. So you're saying, I don't know why this is so the spouse 1 who died, their half of the community property would go to the child?
Yes.
Okay. What is making you say that?
I'm just not sure if I'm right. Oh, like why I'm because they, and let me know if I'm getting technically too complicated, but they didn't do second parent adoption, right? So the kid isn't both of theirs legally.
Okay, so let's say I introduce this, that spouse 2 did do second parent adoption. Would your answer change when everything else is the same?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, you just said the reason you answered that the child would inherit the deceased spouse's share is because there is no second parent adoption. So I'm saying, okay, Samala, let's say there was a second parent adoption. If that's what made up your mind, so that would indicate to me that you would have a different answer under those circumstances.
Yes, because then it would go to the spouse because there's no kids outside the marriage, technically.
Sam, that is the answer.
Oh my God.
You're being really intense, so it's making us all second guess ourselves.
I'm like, am I
even
right?
Though we're like, no, that's what we.
I'm not being intense. I'm asking very matter of fact, direct questions.
Yeah, it's being intense.
I mean,
I don't know. For some reason, in this context, it feels a lot more high stakes. Like, oh no, don't say the wrong thing. And I'm like,
because it's the fact that you think our podcast is high stakes is something that I'm going to have to sit with that for a while later. I might have to journal about it.
That your boss is asking you on a medium that will be presented to a lot of people, and you will
I like how you said presented, not viewed or listened to, just presented.
It will be put out there, presented to a bunch of people, and you will like mercilessly, how you say, remind, yay, nay, needle at anything that's wrong. So yeah, it's high stakes.
But for the most part, you guys are doing it right, because this is the stuff we deal with all the time. But to circle back to that thing, yes, because, and I don't know that a lot of same-sex couples realize this, but if you haven't gone through that second parent adoption in this scenario, then technically that child, even though anonymous sperm donor is not another legal parent, is actually not of that marriage and would trigger these community property rules. But if the child's underage, who is a judge going to appoint then? Because again, there's no paternity, so there's no other parent. This is the other. I mean, it could be by virtue of the birth certificate, maybe, but the big thing that we run across is that a birth certificate does not is not a determination of parentage.
Yeah.
And this is all specific to Texas. Okay, remember that. What we're talking about now is very, very different state to state. But in this scenario, it's really like, I think the argument is really more sex discrimination than LGBT discrimination. But if it's because it's a woman, and Texas defines mother, and we talked about this with Jamie when she was on I was about to say on our show. It is a show, right? When she was on the podcast, that it's giving birth or having adoption or legal adjudication. So we're saying none of those things happen. And being on a birth certificate doesn't count in that case, because in the scenario I gave, it's two women. So anyway, that's who owns the house. Wild stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. And when you think about it, though, like the fact patterns that we just went through are all very common scenarios that people are in. I mean, people have blended families, people have stepchildren, people, have homes before marriage and move into them. Or, one of my favorite scenarios, actually, we did not go through this one, and I don't want to do a quiz about it because I want to bag on appraisal districts, but is what if they weren't married, they bought a home together, and then they got married? Like, it's a property. So basically, half of it's community property, and half of it's separate property of each of theirs.
Yes.
So it's messy, people. It's messy, messy, messy. All right. So I wanted to talk about a trend that we have been seeing, because Burch Law is entering its 20th year. Collectively, we have seen a lot. And so this is something that we have not seen until, frankly, the last year. So if hopefully you're following along with everything that we're saying about homes and property in Texas, and how there's no joint tenancy with rights to survivorship and all of that good stuff. So what we've been seeing appraisal districts do is, let's say you've got a married couple, and one of the spouses passes away, and the other spouse takes the death certificate to the appraisal district and presents them the death certificate. And then the appraisal district is now saying, oh yeah, your name's also on the title. We'll now update the appraisal district to show you as the sole owner. And we've had a couple instances of this. So finally, we just called the appraisal district, basically saying, what are you doing? There's been no changes in the law. And they're like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If both names are on the title, like, we'll change that. But no, we're not doing any deed work or anything like that. So it's still the same situation. So basically, they're giving people the misperception that the title to their home is clean and clear in their name. And in fact, they're 100% not doing that. They're basically updating a mailing address. Except when they enter it in their little computers, it will show like 100% ownership. But that's not true. And people really need to understand that, because then it puts people in our position, whether it's probate attorneys or estate planners or real estate attorneys or title, like all of us in the position of saying, no, that's not accurate. And then, you could have the misperception, well, you're just trying to make a buck getting me to do this stuff. It's like, no, actually, this is a huge problem, because we can then run a title search and show you there's no chain of title, there's no deed record here that is making that switch. I cannot even believe that appraisal districts are doing this. I'm actually shocked, because it's pretty hard to get, a bureaucracy to do anything.
Yeah.
But, and heaven forbid, like they love to tell you, oh, you need to get a lawyer to help you with that. So really, really sad. So listen to that, everybody. If you're going to take two things out of this podcast that are unrelated to whatever the hell Sam and Sarah is going to throw at us, take away that a home does not automatically go to a spouse, and take away the fact that if an appraisal district updates a title because all you showed them was a death certificate, that is not, in fact, creating any sort of ownership transfer. You're still in the same boat. All right. So that concludes the first ever episode of Whose House Is It?
That was Who Owns That House?
That wasn't the...
Oh, that was the alternate title. All right, let's try that again from the top. Who owns the house? I kind of like Whose House Is It? Now that I said that a different way.
Whose house is it?
It sounds like Whose line is it anyway?
House is it? Yeah, I like that one better. Sarah, go back and redub everything for this episode.
Okay, yeah.
Just do it. So I do, the one thing I can say for Sam and Sarah is that they usually try to tie their segment into something topical. True. And I don't really know the inside outs of what they're presenting, but I don't see the connection. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let Sam and Sarah take over and explain to us what they want to talk about and how that can relate to Whose House Is It?
So basically we were talking about like who owns the house, right? And so we thought we would share some celebrities who own some ridiculous things.
So that's the tie, the ownership piece.
Yeah, the ownership of it. Even though a couple of these are technically
very weak, but I'll take it.
Thank you. Okay, so the first one, we're gonna go from cheapest to most expensive. We just kind of wanted to mention her, but Taylor Swift has some. I think they're Scottish fold cats. Is that what they're called?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, did you say Scottish fold?
I don't know what they're called. They're Scottish something.
I think you said Scottish folk.
Oh, I said fold with a D.
Yeah, Scottish folds.
Wait, right? Okay. Sam, say fold.
Fold.
Okay.
Fold.
Proceed.
Fold. Okay. Well, she has some Scottish folds.
I like the way you talk.
Oh.
And they can range from...
I need an adult.
Well, you are the adult. They range from about 1,500 to 2,000-ish a piece. Probably more if she's... Maybe there's some rich breeders out there. I don't know.
Right, yeah.
So those aren't really like dumb things to own because they're actually very cute, but
you can also find a cat outside and bring it in, and it's
outside on the street in front of your apartment. That's what I did with one of my cats.
Yeah, it's
just kind of there.
Economical. Free cat.
Yeah. All right, so next on our list we have Kelly Rowland, who spent $5,200 on a crystal bathtub for Blue Ivy.
Who's Beyonce's kid?
Right, Beyonce's kid. I mean,
who doesn't know that?
I don't know. People who don't care about Beyonce. That's not us.
I stand by my question.
Okay, the next is Lady Gaga, and this is personally my favorite one. She spent $50,000 just alone on this on a ghost detector because her house was haunted apparently in like the early 2010s or something like that. So that doesn't even include like any other equipment. Just for one piece of equipment, she spent $50,000.
Justin Bieber spent $100,000 to convert his car into a Batmobile, which I feel like is pretty low if you're going to convert your car.
Yeah. What was the car? I mean, depends on what the original car was.
I think it was like a Cadillac CT5 or something like that. I don't know if that's the right name, but somewhere around there. If I remember correctly. Are you looking it up?
Of course I am.
Huh. Is that right?
Well, no, I'm looking up a Cadillac CT5. I feel like if he would have done like the really old school Batmobile, like I could see an old Cadillac working for it. But it would have been nice if you would have had pictures for us.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Hey Sarah, can you do that for later? Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, the next one is Ben Affleck. Lori's favorite in Halloween costume. Was that Ben Affleck? It was, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. But he's not my favorite.
Your favorite?
He's not my favorite anything.
Your favorite meme to dress up for the year of 2024.
Okay.
Fair. Anyway, he spent $105,000 on a toilet seat for Jennifer Lopez, and it has diamonds, pearls, rubies, and sapphires on it.
I think that's my favorite.
That's fair.
Buying someone a toilet seat is like the least romantic thing you could ever.
I think you're right, Sarah. I'm not sure that there's anything that's my mom got mad at my dad because he got her canisters one time for I think Valentine's Day.
Canisters?
But yeah.
Like storage canisters? I don't
like
see a
for
problem
flour, sugar, and they matched her kitchen. We had one of those 90s duck kitchens.
Yeah.
Nice. At least it matched.
She really wanted them. She really, really wanted them.
Oh, okay. Then
But it was
kinda...
but it was the idea that it was for Valentine's Day.
That's fair, I guess.
Okay.
But
guys,
I think a toilet seat. I don't know what my mom would have done if he got her a toilet seat with ducks on it. And each time you lifted it up, it goes quack. Oh my God. All right, I'm kind of talking myself into the toilet seat.
Okay, well, hold on. I need to back up a little bit here.
Yeah.
You guys were talking about this West Coast custom Batmobile. It is essentially the Cadillac vehicle which you spake of. It is just matte black, and they just added the Batmobile, like the bat symbol on the front.
I never said it was
the emblem would be. Yeah, this is why you come with pictures, people, because this just looks like a matte black car that they just listen.
Sounds like he got ripped off.
I feel like
I mean, it doesn't fly or submerge itself in water.
It looks just like a matte black car.
Good for him.
Yeah. I'm not loving that trend, by the way, right now with matte colored cars.
Like the actual texture of matte, or like.
Well, it's so they're not glossy or shiny. Like it's a big trend right now.
Oh,
you can or I don't want to admit why I know this, but I think actually the statement will indicate why I know this. But you can order Mustangs right now, and for like an additional, I don't know, a few grand, you can have the color be matte, like have a matte film over it.
Interesting.
It's crazy it costs that much to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, there's also an emblem on the steering wheel.
Okay.
Listen, I'm not really impressed so far.
We never said these were good purchases.
I think their intent is the opposite of being impressed by these purchases.
Listen, I'm not impressed by any of these. Especially because
I absolutely get the Lady Gaga thing.
Yeah, I would absolutely do that.
I would consider that if I move someone, and like absolutely 100%.
Oh yeah. If I was
rich, I don't have any problem paying money for pets.
If I was rich and I had a haunted house, I would hire the Ghost Adventures crew to come to my house.
See, I was hoping that
I would need Zach Baggins personally to find the ghost for me.
I saw, actually, this was just yesterday. I saw this video that was basically saying, it was a reel, and it said that if you could see the ghost, they'd be a lot less scary. So first they show like a chair moving by itself and a door opening and closing by itself. And then they showed a guy opening and closing a door, moving a chair around. It's like, that's so true. If you can see the ghost, it's not scary at all. Like turning the light switch on and off.
Saying like, if they can do all that, why can't you pick up a Swiffer and just move it around?
So I think ghosts are not scary. It's the fact that we can't see them.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, if they're willing to do some house chores, I'm down. Okay, but back to this Batmobile thing. If it would have been like a replica of the 1966 Batman Batmobile,
sure.
You know what? I'm down. But no.
I don't think Justin Bieber cares that much. Especially because I think this was in his early days.
Yeah.
Being a child with money.
Let's move on to the next thing.
All right. So next up, we got Nicolas Cage. He spent $276,000 on a Tyrannosaurus skull, but it turns out it was stolen, so he gave it back to the rightful owner. So good job, Nick. Kind of wild.
What's the series of movies he was in that I'm trying to, where they actually steal like old
National Treasure?
National Treasure. Yeah. So is it during that era that he did this? It's kind of a strange coincidence.
It was like 2007, is what I'm saying. I think. Yeah, 2007. Apparently he's like obsessed with like collecting stuff like that, like dinosaur skulls and other collectible stuff. Apparently he outbid DiCaprio, which is interesting. He doesn't seem like a guy who would.
Wait, he likes to collect skulls or artifacts or fossils or what exactly?
Yeah. Hold on. Let me look. He's apparently done a bunch of comic books. Oh, apparently he Heritage Comics of Dallas, which fun fact, when I applied for Burch Law, I also applied for them. Fun fact.
For where?
Heritage Comics of Dallas. It's like an auction place. It's like a section of Heritage auctions.
For the comic books?
Yeah, for specifically like
Wait a minute. All right, you need to stop, Sam, stop.
Yeah.
When you were in the job market, you applied to a comic book auction house into an estate planning and probate law firm.
Yeah.
Just shooting shots.
Yeah, I walked in and she's like, I like cats. And she's like, okay.
No, okay, one, they were close, and I'm very into like comic
books. Hold on, so, they were close?
Yeah, from my own apartment.
Whenever we are close.
Apparently that's the only criteria.
Yeah, because I didn't want to drive 40 minutes. You guys just had the bonus of being gay. I don't know what to tell you.
Do they still have openings?
I don't.
I mean, yeah, you might want to see.
Damn.
The answer is I don't know.
I mean, I genuinely don't know.
Okay, moving on.
Well, you genuinely should not know.
No, I did not know. I think this is just about his comic books in here.
Yeah, what's the next one?
I actually think, as someone who is not a cajillionaire, I actually think $276K is fairly reasonable for a T-Rex skull.
Yeah.
I mean, that's millions of years old and extinct. I don't know. How much does a Picasso go for? Like, I mean, we're talking like millions of dollars. Like, I think $250,000 for a T-Rex skull, I wouldn't want it. And if I had that kind of money, I wouldn't pay for it. I just think that's reasonable, is what I'm saying.
He also has purchased 2 islands, 2 snakes, and a pet octopus, specifically 2 king cobras. They were also around the same price of the skull. That's really it that People magazine has given me. But
also think it's probably a good deal for an island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm on board with buying an island. What's next?
So the next one is Kim Kardashian. She bought $750,000 gold toilets.
What is it with commodes and celebrities?
I know.
I don't know.
It's too many.
Well, Kim K is too much.
Well, that was just the seat.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, anyway, she can have it.
And we have one more.
Okay, our last one is Celine Dion, who spent $2 million on a humidifier while she was living in Vegas.
During her
I don't know if she still lives in Vegas.
Well,
I think she was doing it
considering all the cigarette smoke that emanates through Vegas, you might need that.
Right, taking no chances.
Like, where is the humidifier? Is this like in a house? Does it do the whole house? Is it in a hotel room? Is it in where she's performing? Like, where is this humidifier?
It was while she was performing. Yeah, it was installed in the Coliseum at Caesar's Palace to protect her vocal cords from the dry desert air.
Okay.
This was in the early 2000s.
It's like whenever you're Celine Dion and you have to keep up the voice and the skin.
Yeah.
I mean, I also do not think that sounds like a ridiculous amount of money for that.
No, and considering she had that, what was it, like the stiff person syndrome or whatever she had? That really messed up her vocal cords.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Now, I can understand a lot of these things, except the toilets. Okay. That was still interesting. So how did that connect to our theme again?
Yeah. Because they own them, and we were talking about owning houses.
No, we were talking about who owns a thing. It was more of like
ownership. Who owns a thing.
Correct.
Yeah, not just what weird things people have bought.
Yes. Well, that's owning it.
That's fine. That's fine. It works. It works. So thank you, all you that you contributed, and to our listeners and fans. If you have made it this far, we are forever indebted to you. Thanks for listening. And just to cover all our bases about what you just heard, I'm sorry and you're welcome. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And tell your friends about us. We do webinars and live events. The best way to stay up to date is to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Links are in the show notes. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, maybe you have a question you'd like us to answer, or maybe you just want to say hi, hit the link in the show notes or go to burch-law.com/podcast and fill out the contact form.
Much better.
Yeah, I thought that had a lot of energy.